WOCA.
WOCA.
All right, 7 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning as we remember the events of 12 years ago today, September 11th, 2001. And if you remember what happened, we went to war not too long after that because of that, and that war was not cheap. And we have a guest on the phone, Wade W. Slome. He has appeared on ABC News, on CNBC, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, pretty much you name it, New York Times. He has written for them or been on their shows. He's going to talk about, in addition to other things, the cost of military action from the September 11th terrorist attacks. Even today, the situation happening in Syria costs money. It's just part of life. And he's written a book called How I Managed $20 billion by the age of 32. I don't know how old he is right now. Wade W. Slome. Good morning, Wade.
Good morning, Larry.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm actually in Las Vegas right now. I'm at an investment conference.
Oh, okay. And is that what you do? You invest money?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing for 20 years. And yeah, they're having a conference out here. We have corporations and companies from all over the world. It's focused on technology, so
right.
we're learning about all the global trends there.
There was a story this morning about the United States perhaps running out of money by mid-October, early November, unless we change the debt ceiling. Do we as a nation invest? Do we? You know what I mean? I've often heard that hospitals will actually invest money so that people who can't afford it will get their costs covered. Is that something that organizations and even nations do, just as individuals do?
Yeah, I mean, when you bring up the debt ceiling and the debt, there's no question that that's an issue, and it's like a broken record. We go through this period from time to time, and what's really important when you're looking at the debt of the nation and how we're doing and what we're doing with our money is the debt to GDP ratio, and the silver lining with the recovery we've had over the last 4 years is we're seeing that debt to GDP ratio come down. So that the uncertainty around Obamacare, you alluded to that. There's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding that, and so we're really still waiting to see how those details are going to impact the economy.
We are going to take just a little break, and I mentioned this before we went on the air, so Wade wouldn't be thrown a curveball here. We're remembering September 11th this morning, and it's not conventional for us to veer from an interview, but just to remember the events of this day. It is 10:10 right now, and at this time, 12 years ago, Flight 93 crashed in Pennsylvania, and so we will toll the bell 3 times, and we'll be right back with Wade. It's just very sobering, I guess you would say, to remember the events of that day and to remember what happened in the days afterward and how we did enter into a war. It is interesting to see how the American people are at this time with the situation in Syria. They're very, very reluctant to embrace any kind of military action, and I'm guessing it has very little to do with the money. But But I'm guessing 12 years later it would be even more. I'm guessing that the cost of war. How could we even afford it? I don't even know. How can anybody afford war?
Yeah, I think you can't really bucket everything into one category. The first thing I think you really need to do is to put things into context or perspective. And we're running a $15 trillion economy. If you look at our GDP, our annual budget is $3.8 trillion, and the Pentagon spends about $630 billion. So obviously, Syria is top of mind of everyone right now, and it's really tough to pinpoint exactly what the estimates are going to be. But if you start with what Defense Secretary Hagel said at the tens of millions of dollars, and even what President Obama said last night, that this is not going to be a prolonged intervention like we saw in Libya and Kosovo. We're probably looking in the areas of, the tens of millions, at worst case probably in the hundreds of millions, but nothing like the over $1 billion we spent in Kosovo and Libya.
So is it almost a barometer for you in the investment world to? I mean, can you pretty much, if you didn't know what was going on in the news, you would probably know something was going on in the news just by watching the investments.
Yeah, there's definitely a correlation, and there's a famous investor, Ben Graham, says that in the short run the stock market is a voting machine. In the long run, it's a weighing machine. So you have a lot of speculators and traders in the short run that'll move the market in all different directions. Eventually, the stocks get it correctly, and so you can't have a rational, volatile activity in the short run. That doesn't necessarily tell you that the market's right, but over time it adjusts just like a scale.
People said that the euro is one of the demises of the economy as we know it today. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, there's no question that when we went through our financial crisis, it was primarily the banking system that brought everything down. And what a lot of people don't understand, when we were doing our TARP and injecting all this money into our banks, we were really pulling the Band-Aid off of the banking sector, whereas Europe, they took a slower, less severe tact with their banks, and because their banks are actually swimming in deeper amounts of debt. So their banks are just still coming out of that malaise, whereas our banks here in the U.S. have never been healthier. If you look at
Really?
capital, yeah, absolutely. If you look at the data, the capital reserves, or the cushion, so you can think of the cushion. And the other way you can understand it, too, is the banks are not lending. That's one reason we've had the slowest recovery since World War II, is because the banks are just sitting on so much cash and reserves. So there's good news and bad news there. Our banks are healthy, but they're not lending as much.
Wade W. Slome is our guest. He's written a book, by the way. It's called How I Managed $20 Billion by the Age of 32. That's pretty awesome right there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many people remembering September 11th, 2001 say, what if this happened again? I mean, I need enough money somewhere so that I could be maybe someplace safer. How many people who lived in New York at that time decided to move out,
Mm-hmm.
We knew one lady. One lady moved to New Smyrna. We do phone calls during these interviews, so let's take a call. Good morning. You're on the air with Wade W. Slome.
Good morning, Mr. Sloan. I understand our actual debt is now approaching $17 trillion, and we have the wizards in Washington talking about a $1 trillion budget. I don't think we produce $1 trillion worth of income for the government to spend $1 trillion, and this is just perpetuating more of the same. And I just feel that the value of $1 today is maybe equal to a quarter for what you can buy, and this is the big thing. I don't care about all this. We need the debt. They're too big to fail. All this other stuff. I'm too big to fail, and I got nobody to blame but myself if I do. So I have no sympathy for anything like that, and yet I understand this country carries $6+ trillion of other countries' debt. How do we do that and still keep functioning? One last thing is this deal here. Why are we still buying European Union bonds? And why are we putting so much money into the World Bank when we haven't got it ourselves? And I'll hang up and listen to your response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, you had a lot of points in there. But regarding the debt, I touched upon it a little bit before. Our government, our country, you can think of it as the better house in a bad neighborhood. Our debt to GDP levels are they're high, but they've been coming down. So although the debt has been increasing, so has our economy. So what a lot of people don't realize is that our country's GDP, which is the measurement of of our country's sales and services, is at record highs. So even though we went through the worst crisis in a generation, the other point I'd make is that corporate profits, and this is what I'm really focused on, is because that's where I invest my clients' money, is taking advantage of what are corporations doing. So although it makes sense we're myopically focused on what's going on in the U.S., the fact of the matter is that if you look at the S&P 500, the largest 500 corporations, they get 40% of their profits internationally. So corporations here aren't investing, they're not hiring as much. There's a lot of uncertainty around what government's doing. So what are they doing? They're investing abroad in emerging markets where the standards of living are increasing. And so a lot of these metrics, although on an absolute basis are high, they're actually, if you look at historically, at average or below average, debt to GDP or deficit to GDP. So the real issue, in my view, are entitlements. And so we all know about that, Social Security and Medicare. These are the debts that are not on our country's balance sheet, but that we're going to have to pay. So I think those are the bigger issues that we need to focus on. As far as European bonds, investments, money goes where it's treated best, and we're investing all over the place. The point we talked about before, the euro versus the dollar and inflation, these are areas that you can take advantage of. So, at Sedoxia, when we invest in our client portfolio accounts, we're investing in commodities, for example. So as your value for your dollar is going down, you can invest in things like real estate, inflation-protected bonds where the values go up with inflation, so your purchasing power can be protected. So those are some of the points I would make on your questions.
Now, will the book help us in our retirement money? In other words, should we just depend on our pensions or our standard investments, the ones we've done through the company, what do they call 401k?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I drew a blank right there. I mean, or should we actually be involved in other investments? And does the world scene actually affect us in that way? Will our retirement funds actually be depleted if we go to war? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, it is almost an epidemic problem right now. I mean, there's 76 million baby boomers. We have a baby boomer turning 65 every 8 seconds, and Americans are woefully undersaving. And as we talked about, that one of my larger concerns is the entitlements, so that the safety net of Social Security and Medicare aren't going to be there to the same degree for a large portion of the population. So it really is important to save as much as possible, because we don't want to be working at Walmart as greeters in our 80s.
Right.
We want to be living our retirements, and the only way we're going to do that is by saving more and investing more now. And it's really tough right now because of all these scary headlines. But the fact of the matter is that we've been through wars, assassinations, currency crises, banking crises, mad cow, SARS, and terrorist attacks. And, guess what? We're a resilient country, and we do rebound.
There you go. And it's underscored today by remembering what happened over the last 12 years. The book is called How I Managed $20 Billion by the Age 32. I wanted to be fair to the book and to our listeners who might be interested in buying and reading the book. Does the book give us lay people an understanding so that we might be better off financially?
Sure, yeah. The book, where I manage one of the 10 largest growth funds in the country, was just a great experience. I got to travel around the world, interview executives, everyone from Jeff Bezos at Amazon, Lee Scott at Walmart, Meg Whitman at eBay, and it was just a great experience. But also part of that book, in addition to giving a bird's eye view of what it's like to manage such a large amount of money, I also talk about, how individuals can select their investment advisors. What are some of the pitfalls they should look for, talk about how they should be investing in a globally diversified way across a broad set of asset classes,
Right.
whether it's real estate, commodities, emerging market bonds, et cetera. So definitely does give you a flavor of what you should be looking at and how you should be investing.
And am I right in assuming that a guy like me probably should go to a guy like you rather than trying to do it on my own?
Well, it's never been more difficult in this Twitter, Facebook society that we live in. The amount of information is just choking investors. This avalanche of data is very difficult for individuals to decipher, and in this short-termism that is affecting everyone makes you really make irrational, emotional decisions, and you just don't make the best decisions then, because every news item or headline that comes across is made into a mountain. Every molehill is really blown out of proportion in many cases.
So it's almost like the investor. We had a guy come into the studio one day, and he was all excited about this Spanish galleon that was discovered under the water off the coast of Florida, and he wanted us to invest in it so that we could get rich, because they're going to find gold on that that ship that was under the water. And we bumped into him maybe 6 months later, and guess what? There was nothing on that boat.
Yeah.
but then there was a story not too long ago where there was some money. So that, I mean, that's a real gamble. But I'm guessing that it's a little bit more calculated than that, especially if we have so many choices. I mean, from your perspective, in order to be able to manage as much money as you have, you've got to be able to look at the things and say, well, that's too risky. I'm not dealing with that one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if it sounds too good to be true, 9 out of 10 times that's the case. And what you really have to understand is that any investment has risks, and we saw that firsthand even with the U.S. government, where people were piling in their money into U.S. Treasuries, and then with the debt ceiling debate a few years ago, and we got credit downgrade, and the fluctuation in government treasury prices, which are guaranteed, that even suffers volatility. So every single investment has risks, and as an investor, you really need to ask the questions, well, that sounds great, but what are the risks? And every investment you make has risks.
Well, it seems like the U.S. government should have you as a consultant and read your book, because it really seems that if we do go to war with Syria, that other countries and not just the U.S. are going to benefit financially as well.
Yeah, I mean, we really are the global babysitter, whether we like it or not. And so there is a wild card, even using a Syria example, and who knows if it's the right strategy or not. But one of the goals is to get some of these allies or the Arab League to front some of the bill. If you're a babysitter, you want to get paid for it, and we're cleaning up their messes. So it makes sense that they should front some of the bill. So hopefully some of that information comes out. The president talked yesterday about getting the UK and France into the discussions. Maybe a diplomatic resolution could be made. Probably not, but if we do go to action, it would be nice if we could get a little help on these dramatically high costs of conducting these engagements.
Just to reintroduce our guest, we have to wrap it up. Wade W. Slome has been speaking to us. He's got a book called How I Managed $20 Billion by the Age 32. He's also the president and founder of Sedoxia Capital Management, LLC. He's also written a book called that's the same book. 1001 Truths About Investing is another book. How do we get your books? How do we find out more about the information that you've given us today?
Yeah, well, you can get a lot of information at my website, which is Sedoxia, SIDOXIA.com. You can follow me on Twitter, at Wade Slome, or if you really want to keep up to speed on what the topics are and what my thoughts are, you can go to my blog, which is Investing Caffeine.
Investing what?
investing caffeine. You got to get that jolt of investing caffeine every morning.
That's right.
All right. I thought that's what you said. I wasn't sure. Wade, thank you for being on the air with us today and for connecting the dots a little bit with world events and our investments, our little world connected to the big world. Thank you, Wade. Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure, Larry and Robin.
All right, we'll take a little break and be right back.
Hey, I'm Gary.
And I'm Eric. Did you know that Red Eye Radio is on WOCA The Source every night from 2 to 6 a.m. and it's live?
That's right. No tape shows here.
We know that the news doesn't sleep.
And neither do we. So we're here with you live from 2 till 6 a.m. every weekday. Call us 866-90-RED-EYE. So join me, Gary McNamara.
And me, Eric Harley, every weeknight to discuss the latest in news and entertainment.
Right here on WOCA The Source.
How good does it get?
Golf has long been considered to be sport's most prestigious game, and WOCA has your connection to everything in the golf world. Every first and third Thursday at 10 a.m., tune in for Let's Talk Golf with your host, PGA professional and teacher to the stars, Jim Beckett, and operations manager for the Links of Spruce Creek South, Darren Irwin, right here on The Source.
All right, thank you, Dan. It is now 10:28. We want to take a moment, as we've been doing all morning, to remember September 11th, 2001. It was at 10:28 on September 11th, 2001 that the World Trade Center North building collapsed. The North building was the first building hit by the planes. It was the second building to collapse, and it collapsed at 10:28. We will toll the bell 3 times to remember the 3,000 people who died on that day 12 years ago.
How good does it get?
Golf has long been considered to be sport's most prestigious game, and WOCA has your connection to everything in the golf world. Every first and third Thursday at 10 a.m., tune in for Let's Talk Golf with your host, PGA professional and teacher to the stars, Jim Beckett, and operations manager for the Links of Spruce Creek South, Darren Irwin, right here on